best people, the best ranches, the best auto auction companies. He's got a great family. I've already bragged on you before you got here, but I enjoy talking about people that are worthy of being spoken about. You know what I mean? There are just some people that are worthy, and you want them to succeed, and you want them to receive the accolades that they deserve. And so I was really thrilled to, introduce him into the Auctioneer Hall of Fame here in Texas, and there's no doubt in my mind there'll come a time he'll go into the National Auctioneer Hall of Fame because he's already worthy. He's a little young. He's only 29, which is weird because he's got a kid so young. But anyway, Doak is going to talk to you about livestock and pedigrees and things of that nature related to the livestock industry. He's got a great pedigree of his own. He's sold a lot of grand champions, and I know you're going to talk about some of that stuff. And he's got a PowerPoint and a video, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mike. It is great to be back here. I used to teach here, gosh, for 15 or 20 years, and then schedules got really hectic, and we just couldn't schedule it. And I hadn't been back in a long time, but I know two people in this classroom, and I know one of them real well. He lived with me for 18 years, and another gentleman over here, Glenn, have had the privilege of doing an auction that he's been involved in for a lot of years. And so I'm familiar with some of you guys, and I'll tell you my story. But before I start, and I know you've already done this, but I would like to, so that I can get to know you and kind of get a feel for the class, I'd like everybody to stand up, and we'll start right here with this pretty young lady. I want you to stand up and tell me your name, where you're from, and why you came to auction school. Okay?
Brittany Hebert Franklin, originally from Abbeville, Louisiana, now reside in Houston, Texas. Came to auction school to get more education about the industry, but specifically for fundraising auctions. I have a nonprofit that fights childhood cancer and hoping to do some of our own auctions soon.
Awesome, great,
Yeah.
very good, Brittany. All right, yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Dan Gross. I'm from Montrose, Michigan. I come to auction school to, I have my own business. I buy and sell farm equipment, and I want to run my own auction. I've been a buyer my whole life with my dad, and I just want to be the other side of it and have control of my own destiny.
Did you ever know a guy out there named John Stam?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, I did.
So lots of-
Been all over the place with him.
Sold lots of equipment for him over
Yep.
there at their house. Yes, sir.
George Wiley, Sanger, Texas. Honestly, just been a bucket list item for me for a long time.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to have on your bucket list. Yes, sir.
Pete Setian, Ennis, Texas. My wife, I've been wanting to be an auctioneer since I was about that tall, and my wife finally told me about a year ago, go and do it. So here I am.
You got a couple of pretty good auctioneers down there, Myers, Craig and Angie. Have they been here yet, Mike?
Not yet.
Are they coming?
They'll be here this week.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Oh, you've never met them?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Great couple, great family.
Monty Edwards from Siouxland, Texas, and I'm in the real estate business, but that's really not the only reason that I got interested in coming to auction school. I've been interested in it ever since I was a kid, and it just kind of lined up good. We joined United Country in April, and so with them having auction services, it gave me a really good reason to come and do it. So.
Good.
My name is Eric Daw. I'm from North Houston, Porter area, but moving to this area. I've always been into collecting collectibles, antiques, automobiles, that sort of thing. I like antique automobiles and antiques. I'd like to get into selling probably auto auction and stuff, just because it's more money.
Show him your tattoo.
Show them your tattoo.
So, it says antiques across my knuckles.
Oh, okay.
That's how much you love those
You're
things.
committed, yeah. Definitely committed. Yes, sir.
I'm Jeff Griffith. I'm from Chillicothe, Missouri, now live in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. I'm here with my wife. We bought an auction house. We love to buy and sell, and I believe it won't be long. We'll be the top auctioneers in our area.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chillicothe's got a great
She'll
sale
be,
barn,
she
by
might,
the way.
where at?
Chillicothe, Missouri.
Chillicothe, Missouri,
Great
yeah.
sale barn there, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Deidre.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm Nikki Griffith, and like you said, we bought a consignment store and an antique store, and it's got the 3,500 square foot building behind it, and it's going to be our auction house.
Cool. So y'all gonna have like one a week or one
That's
a
the
week?
goal.
Estates, anything we can sell.
Awesome. Awesome. Glenn?
Hey,
Hi,
good
Glenn.
morning.
He's one of the other guys.
Well, my mother, and this has been on my, like he said, this has been on my bucket list ever since my grandfather's dairy farm was sold at auction when I was 10 years old after he passed away. And I went with my great uncle and the Lord's Acre at the Methodist Church, and just always I've been working some charity functions, not knowing I had to be licensed to do it, and enjoyed it. And one person asked me to come and do it, and you guys have been a super inspiration for me. If I could get a quarter as good as you guys are, that would be a dream for me. But anyway, the guy was talking to me about the auction, not what I do, and I need a license, and Pat and my mom overheard him and gave it to me for Christmas.
Oh, okay. Hey, that's a great Christmas gift.
I know.
I'm Kate Weber. I grew up in Southeast Texas, but I live in Azle, Texas, right outside of Fort Worth now. I also have a nonprofit that I started, and that's a huge reason why I'm here.
Cool. What does the nonprofit benefit?
I raise money for young women to pay for fertility preservation before starting cancer treatment.
Awesome. Very good. Yes, sir.
My name's Kevin Cohen. I'm from Livingston, Texas. We just bought, my dad and I bought it in an auction house in Cleveland. It used to be Hal's Auction, and then we moved it down the road. We teamed up with David Burns. He does live action auctions in Livingston, and so that's why I'm here.
Okay.
Be an auctioneer.
Great.
I'm Preston Cooley. I'm originally from South Carolina, but right now from Dallas. And I came to auction school. It's kind of twofold. I'm a nonprofit fundraiser, so tick that box. And like many in here, I've gone to auctions since I was a kid, and I've always wanted to do it, so I'm finally doing it.
There you go. There you go.
How's it going? Steve DeLuna here from Van Alstyne, Texas, grew up in Plano. I've always loved auctions. I've always loved the excitement that comes with the auctions. Right now, my eyes are being opened to this whole new world of things I never thought about. So right now, it's kind of like I would like to own my own auction house, but to see where everything takes me, and I'm open to all opportunities, just with this great class to see where we go.
Did you ever go to the Southwest auction there at Hal, big tractor auction?
Yes, I have. We were there a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Couldn't get anything because
Yeah.
prices went through the roof.
I used to work there 15 years ago.
I'm Nick Czar from Gove, Kansas. I'm in United Country Real Estate also, licensed Kansas and Nebraska. My farm and ranch sells some ag equipment to go to sale barns and purebred sales all the time. So.
Great.
Tommy Smith, I'm from Warren, Texas. I hadn't previously had my license, and I didn't do the continued education, and I let them go, which was a mistake. But I've been around auctions all my life. I love them, and that's why I'm here.
Great.
I'm Preston. I'm from Azle, as well as Kate. My dad, he works for Myers Jackson, and he's just been pounding my butt about it. I figured, well, I ain't gonna have any more time than now while I'm young to do it, so.
Might as well get it done now. Did you and Kate know each other before you came here? Y'all met here, you're both from Azle? Huh?
I've only been there for about a year now.
Okay. Well, we're all neighbors. I live in Decatur.
Okay. Oh, cool. I remember I was there last week.
Yeah. At NRS?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm Sam Pitts. I'm from West Valley, Kansas. Kind of grew up around the farm equipment auction, and just something I always wanted to do, and been out my whole life, and they inspired me to do it.
Where's West Valley? Is that western Kansas?
Southeast.
That's southeast Kansas. Okay.
My name is Logan McFarland. I'm from Norwich, Kansas. I just kind of started getting into the cattle business and going to sale barns and stuff. The Champ is super fascinating. Really respectful for all of the guys that are really good at it. And he's my cousin, so it's kind of a team deal, and here we both take a whack at it. So
Good for you. Glad you're here. Yeah, that kid right there.
I'm Denton Lambert. I'm from Decatur, Texas, and
I've grown up going to auctions, and I know a couple good ones that convinced me to come to auction school. So.
Did they pay?
Glad you're here. Glad you're here and you're not playing hooky.
Man, y'all look alike.
I'm a lot better looking than you.
Hi, I'm Todd Weiss. I live in Nashville now, originally from Wisconsin, but I do strategic advising and do mergers and acquisitions across numerous different entities across the United States, whether it's transportation, manufacturing, or construction. So this is kind of one of those levels I'm hoping to get more insight as they come down the pipe, where I get the front information before it's out to the public.
Cool. Very good.
I'm Miles Zaglewski. I'm from Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I guess for the past 8 years I've been on the side ringing for benefit auctions through Swisher Auctions, and I guess my hope is to expand my awareness and expertise in the auctioneer field.
Do you know the Nichols family up there? John Nichols? Yeah.
The Godfather.
Yeah. He's great. Is that it? That's it. Okay. Well, very good. It looks like we've got a great, diverse cross-section of people, a lot of different interests, and I applaud each and every one of you for coming. I'll tell you my story real quick, and I'll try not to keep it. I'll try to keep it short, but I tell you this just to illustrate what a lot of you have already said. It's the theme is to keep your mind open and keep the doors open, and don't ever say no to an opportunity. And it sounds like some of y'all have done that. So when I left home, I wanted to be a veterinarian. Went to Texas A&M University, got an animal science degree, and my sophomore year, my counselor went to see him. I was working out my class schedule for the next year. He said, "Sadok, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to go to vet school." He had those glasses, set on his nose, and he looked at me over his nose, looked back down at the transcripts, and he goes, "Doak, you're not going to vet school." He said, you're doing okay. He said, "but you got to have a 4.0 to even get considered to go to vet school." And he said, "You don't have a 4.0. And okay. I liked cattle, and I liked ranching, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a large animal vet, so I stayed in it, kept going, got my animal science degree. And I got out of school and I went to work for an auction company. Now, we were a purebred livestock, what we call sale managers in our industry. I went to work for a sale manager, and we managed auctions all over the country. Nobody in that company was an auctioneer, which is kind of funny, but we handled all the details. We did all the advertising, we got on the phone, we got the buyers there. They sent a guy like me 2 or 3 days early to get all the pens set up and the tents. Back then we were doing a lot of them in tents, and get the cattle washed and penned and sorted, and just all the kind of things you got to do to get ready for a cattle auction. And then when the auction was over, my bosses would fly in, and they'd put on the dog and pony show, and then I'd stay another day or two and make sure all the cattle got put on the right trucks and make sure the ranch looked good, because we had these auctions on people's ranches, and then I would go to the next one, and it was a great job. I loved it. I got to, I was just a small town kid. All of a sudden I was getting to travel across the country. We were doing sales from California to Florida, and I was driving most of them. My bosses were flying to all of them, but I was driving most of them. So I had a lot of time in the car. Well, we had a sale in Evansville, Indiana, in the second week in December, which was not very good planning on our part, because it can get pretty cold there. Sure enough, a blizzard came through. We had contracted with an auctioneer from Texas to come sell it, and he flew from San Antonio to St. Louis, and then he was going to catch a little commuter to Evansville, Indiana, and the blizzard came over St. Louis and shut down the airport. He couldn't get out. He was stuck in the St. Louis airport all day and night. And anyway, he calls us that morning of the sale and says, "Man, I'm stuck. I don't think I can get there." And so, we're just a couple hours from sale time, and we get the yellow pages out, and we start looking for auctioneers. And we found this old boy who was an antique auctioneer. He was very professional, super nice guy, but he knew nothing about cattle. He didn't know the people, he didn't know the cattle, he didn't know the pedigrees. But we hired him anyway, and he, under the circumstances, he did a marvelous job. But it just wasn't ideal. So when we got back to the office the next week, my bosses, we had tried to have a sales meeting every Monday morning or Tuesday morning when we all got back in town. My bosses said, "Hey, somebody in this company's got to be an auctioneer." And, you know, we just need an insurance policy. We're not going to promote that as our service, but just in case this happens again, we got to have an insurance policy. And the company was owned by these two guys, and they're kind of having this discussion, and I'm just sitting there listening. They're looking at each other, and one of them goes, I don't have time to go to auction school. And the other one goes, well, I don't have time to go to auction school. And they looked at me and they go, you're going to auction school. So they sent me to auction school, and at the time, Texas Auction Academy didn't exist, so I went to Missouri Auction School in Kansas City, Missouri. It was a great experience. I got to study under some of my instructors were some of my heroes in the business that I already knew about. A guy named Stanley Stout, a guy named Boyd Michaels, a guy named Darrell Ball. They were all instructors, and they were all very prominent in the purebred livestock business at the time. And I got to know, I kind of already knew Stanley Stout, and I got to know Darrell Ball and Boyd Michaels real well. Anyway, Boyd Michaels, who was the preeminent dairy cattle auctioneer at the time, and this was several years ago, 1986 to be exact. Boyd pulled me off. He said, "Son," he said, "you got a lot of potential." He said, "I can tell you've been around this business all your life." And I said, "Yes, sir." And I said, I told him the story of why I was there, and he said, "Well, I tell you what, if you want to be an auctioneer," he said, "I know what you do." And he said, "I know you're on the road all the time." He said, "If you'll practice in that car while you're driving instead of listening to the radio," he said, "just commit to do it for a year." And he said, "Record yourself when you start and record yourself a year later and see how you sound." And so I took his advice, and he said, you know, just count telephone poles or whatever you can while you're driving down the road. So I recorded it, and just like many of you, I think Mike even plays his tape of the first day he started. I was horrible, you know, I couldn't even hardly count, you know, $1 bid, and now what comes after one, you know. But anyway, I made that recording, kept doing my job, kept driving all over the country, you know, practicing, counting telephone poles, and you know, after a couple of months, it started coming a little easier. I go, you know, I'm sounding a little better. You know, after 6 months, I'm like, well, I'm sounding okay. After a year, I recorded that thing like he told me to, and I thought, hey, if this happened again, I could do it. Well, sure enough, our company, we had a sale in Jackson, Mississippi, at the Dixie National Livestock Show, which is a big livestock show in the Southeast. And this was a ballroom auction. We had it at the Ramada Hotel right across from the fairgrounds in a ballroom. I mean, there's crystal chandeliers. And back then, people dressed in coats and ties to come to this thing. We set up a sale ring just inside this hotel ballroom. We ran the cattle in that sale ring, sold them, ran them back out in the parking lot. We had pins and everything in the parking lot.
In the ballroom?
Yes, in the ballroom.
Oh my God. We
had pins and everything set up in the parking lot, and we pinned them back in these pins, and then, you know, when sale was over, we brought in trucks and hauled them all out. Well, I'm back there in the back, and one of my bosses runs back there. He said, "Hey, come here." And I ran inside. He said, "We got a problem." He said, I'm not going to call his name because I don't want to get in trouble. But he goes, "So-and-so is not here, and we're supposed to start in 30 minutes. So I ran, got on the phone. I had his house number, and his wife answered. And I said, "Hey, is so-and-so, where is he?" She goes, "Well, he's in South Texas today. He's supposed to be in Mississippi tomorrow." And I said, "No, he's supposed to be in Mississippi right now." And she said, "Well, on his calendar, he's got it tomorrow." So anyway, we figure out we don't have an auctioneer. Well, this was like I said, kind of a bright light sale. And the sale chair, it was a consignment sale, so different breeders had put cattle in the same. And the sale chairman was a guy named Joe Frank Sanderson. Anybody ever had Sanderson's Farms Chicken? Oh, yeah. He was the founder, CEO of Big Dog, and he was in the cattle business as well. And he was coordinating the sale, and he was really a grouchy kind of little guy. He passed, so, you know, rest in peace. But anyway, he reminded me of that cartoon character, Foghorn Leghorn. Just kind of talked, his southern demeanor, you know, I say boy, you know, that was just kind of the way he was. And we told him that our auctioneer wasn't there, and he blew a gasket, you know, and it's guys like that can do it. And my bosses were like, "Joe Frank, settle down. Doak here is an auctioneer, and he can do it." Well, mind you, I had just come from the back. I had a ball cap on. I had a shirt covered in manure. I'd been sorting cattle and getting everything ready in the back. And Joe Frank looks down, and he's like, "I'm dead in the first reader." And he goes, "Him?" He goes, "Yes, he's an auctioneer. He can do it." So I take my ball cap off, and I mean, it's sale time. We get up there. Joe Frank takes the microphone, kind of welcomes the crowd. And again, bear in mind, everybody's dressed real nice. This is a pretty highbrow event. And Joe Frank said, "Well, we got a problem here tonight." He said, "Our auctioneer didn't show up." And he said, "So we're going to let Doak sell it." And he said, "Y'all bear with us. We'll muddle through this thing. Here's Doak." that was my introduction.
Your first introduction.
Oh,
My
my
introduction
God.
to the auction business.
Aw.
And as fate would have it, the first consignment was a female that he was selling, who she was a pretty famous cow in our breed, in the Brangus breed. And anyway, she brought $10,000 and he lit up, he thought that was great. And they wanted to average about $2,000 at the time. Bear in mind, this is back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And we averaged close to $5,000, and all of a sudden, everything was great. Well, Joe Frank had a big smile on his face and he pat me on the back. And so after that experience, people started calling our company and saying, hey, we were there when Doak sold that sale, or we heard about Doak selling that sale. Can we hire y'all to manage our sale, and can we hire Doak to sell it? And they said, sure. So I started getting booked from some sales doing it that way. And then as time went on, I started getting calls from people saying, hey, can we hire you without hiring your company? And I'm like, not really. And so enough of that finally started happening that I broke out on my own just as an auctioneer, and left on good terms. In fact, I still do some work for that company today. And so that's how I got in the auction business. And, again, when that professor looked over his glasses at me and told me, you ain't going to auction school, the last thing I thought I would end up doing would be an auctioneer. So again, I tell you that kind of lengthy story just to say, don't ever close a door of opportunity and say, oh, I'm not ever going to do that, because you never know what turns life is going to take you on. And so anyway, that's how it's worked for me, and it's been a great business for our family. We absolutely love the auction business. My wife, who she said she was going to try to stop by here later, is also an auctioneer. And like I said, we've gotten to go places and meet people and do things that, never thought a little small town kid from Texas would get to do. And it's all been provided through the auction business and the relationships that we built and got to know through doing auctions. So anyway, it's a bright business and a bright opportunity. So again, I haven't done this in a long time, and I'm going to try to remember as best I can how this PowerPoint goes. Lori, do I have a little clicker?
Yeah, it's right
Here.
there.
So I'm going to talk to you today about the livestock industry and how auctions apply in the livestock industry. And there's some basic things we need to, first of all, understand about the cattle business. A lot of you that are already in the cattle business or have had a lot of exposure to the cattle business, this will be a little bit boring to you and a little bit elementary. Bear with us, because I just want everybody to have a fundamental idea of what we're talking about. So when we're talking about selling livestock, what are we talking about? Well, we got cattle, we got horses. I did a horse sale at the Fort Worth Stock Show the other day. The horse market is really healthy, by the way, right now. Hogs, there's a lot of purebred pig auctions across the country, sheep and goat sales. How about chickens? Anybody ever been to a chicken auction?
Yep.
There you go. Houston Livestock
Yep.
Show and Rodeo sells the Grand Champion pen of chickens for about $50,000 a piece.
Oh, it went for 200,000 2 years ago. It
Yeah,
went crazy.
yeah, it is. It's nuts, and it makes you think, wow, maybe I'll be in the chicken business.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of a specialty deal. I don't know of a chicken sale barn like I do. But there are chickens that get sold, poultry that get sold at auction. How about exotics? Anybody ever been to an exotic?
Yeah, for ranches, it's
See,
cool.
they're selling a zebra right there in that ring. That had some guys from Kansas. I don't see anybody from Missouri, but that's Lolly Brothers up there in Missouri. You've probably been to it. Anyway, they sell zebras. And, they bring in a cage of bats. They'll sell bats. They sell all kinds of weird stuff at these exotic auctions.
What's a zebra go for?
I don't know. I've never sold one. They
All right.
might sent me the picture, but these things kind of go in cycles. And back in the 80s and early 90s, these things were crazy. And I heard of animals like that, not necessarily that one's bringing $150,000. And some of these ostriches and what do you call
Emus.
them? Emus,
Yeah.
they went through a big fad where
Llamas.
where they were bringing stupid money, and then all of a sudden they just crashed and fell off the cliff. So anyway, but the auction method of marketing has been used to sell all kinds of livestock. I'm going to deer
Yeah.
deal's really big. I've heard of some deer embryos bringing 200,000 a piece, at auction. So the auction
Deer?
method marketing
Yeah.
is used to do
It's
it.
a
But I'm going
South
to
Texas thing.
talk mostly about cattle because that's what my level of expertise is. You can take some of these concepts and apply them to different industries, but I'm going to talk about cattle because that's kind of the world I live in. So when we talk about the cattle cycle, we've got, in my mind is kind of a three-pillar operation. You got the cow-calf operator, right? You drive around rural America, you see these cows out in the pasture, those cows are owned by a guy, and he gets them bred, and he hopes that cow's gonna lay down and have a calf, and then he's gonna take that calf and raise it till it's about 6 or 7 months old on its mother, and then he's gonna wean that calf off of the mother, and then a couple of things can happen from there. A lot of them are just going to take that calf to the sale barn and sell it at the sale barn, which would go through the auction method of marketing, which we like. Some guys will, what we call, retain ownership of that calf. They've got other pastures that grow winter grass in the winter, and they'll put that calf on some winter grass, some wheat and oats or something, and they'll fatten him up a little more, let him gain a little weight, let him grow a little more, let him age a little more. We call those guys stockers or backgrounders. Some guys, that's all they do. They go to sale barns and they go to producers and they buy their weaned calves, and they take them and they background them or put them on these pastures of winter grass, and they grow them for 3 months or 4 or 5 or even 6 months, and then there's something else to do with that calf. So then that calf could go to an auction. Most time they don't. They go directly to a feedlot, and that calf is then fed in a feedlot, a real high energy ration, a lot of corn, stuff that's going to make him fat, and stuff that's going to make that carcass marble. And then, he'll be harvested at a packing plant at some point in time. I forgot I had this. So, yeah, there's the 3-step process. So there's your cow-calf operator. I'm a cow-calf operator. I got a set of cows. I just shipped a set of calves this morning before I came here to the sale barn. And somebody will buy them, put them on some pasture like that. Hopefully they'll grow and they'll gain and they'll turn out good. And then at some point they'll go to a feedlot probably, and they'll get fed. And so I tell the story, when my kids were little, we used to go skiing in New Mexico, and we would drive from the Metroplex to Red River or Angel Fire, one of those places. It was about a 10-hour drive, and so we would leave real early in the morning. We'd get the kids in their pajamas, and we'd put them in the Suburban. They'd go sleep, and I'd drive, and we'd head out. We'd get to the Panhandle, and one of the kids invariably would wake up and go, "What is that smell?" I go, "It smells like money to me. I don't know. What do you smell?" And up there in the Panhandle, there's a lot of these feedlots where it's a concentrated feeding operation, and when you congregate that many cattle in one spot, you're going to get some odor, and that's what that is. But eventually, that cycle produces what ends up on our plate, and we eat, and that's the industry I'm in. So you can see through here that the auction method of marketing comes into play right here to there. Sometimes it comes into play from there to there. Usually, we don't auction off fat cattle, what we call fat cattle. Once those cattle are done in the feedlot, they're ready to go to harvest. They don't get auctioned off. They get, you may have heard about it in the news, but one of the big 4 packers ends up with them, and they kill them, and then they end up at the grocery store or on the plate at the restaurant. So back up a little bit, and let's talk about 2 different segments of the cattle business, okay? So here's the general commercial cattle population. This is the commodity cattle. These are the cattle that end up on our plate. That has a whole separate auction division of guys that auction those cattle. And then over here we've got what I call the registered business or purebred business. Some people call it the seed stock business. And those are the breeding cattle that we use to improve the genetics of this bigger population. There's auctioneers that specialize in this circle right here, and there's auctioneers that specialize in this circle right here. I specialize in this circle right here. Well, that's not a very big circle. I've got about probably 5 to 8 what I would call serious competitors across the country. About 8 or 10 of us do 80% of the purebred sales in the country. And that's the business that I have chosen to be in through the group that I went to work for right out of college. That's just kind of what I've always done. But there's a whole lot of auctioneers at the local sale barn. Many of you probably have a sale barn in your hometown or nearby. You stop in there, they have a sale every week, and there's an auctioneer, same guy, doing a great job selling those cattle. I'm going to one tomorrow in Decatur, our local sale. I'm not selling it. I'm actually selling some calves at it tomorrow, so I'm going to go watch my calves sell. And there'll be an auctioneer, he's a good guy, a friend of mine, sits up there all day and sells them and does a great job. So, again, I haven't seen these slides in several years, so I'm trying to remember how they all fit together. So that's basically what I just talked about. You got market cattle, or what some people call commodity cattle. Those cattle end up going through the pipeline, end up on our plate. And then you got breeding cattle. Those cattle are used to improve the genetics of the market cattle. Okay, everybody kind of understand that? Kind of the two
Market
reasons?
is commercial and the purebred is breeding.
Yeah, and the registered purebred sales, you know, there's a whole lot of auction trade in these cattle right here. Like I do a purebred sale probably twice a week, two a week in the heavy season. So, you know, even though it's a small circle, there's a whole lot of auctions. You guys in Kansas, you know, I'm sure you've, man, in the fall, there's an Angus bull sale every day somewhere in Kansas and Oklahoma. So this is, that's a typical sale barn that has a sale every week. Unfortunately, I don't think that one's open anymore. They shut down. But anyway, you go back there, well, you walk in the door and it might look something like that. And you see does it have one of those little red things on there? The lasers?
It does.
Anybody know which button it is?
No, we've seen it. We've seen the green circle a few times.
Yeah, I knew if I hit something I wasn't supposed to hit.
I don't know if that one does.
Okay. Okay, so you walk in, auctioneer's sitting right up there, he's got a ticket writer beside him, they walk these cattle in, here's a lot of your buyers sitting around there. Any given Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you can probably go somewhere and find a sale barn similar to this, and they're selling commercial cattle. Now that pen right there looks, it's hard to tell what's in there, but let's just say there's 15 steers in there. That auctioneer is going along, and if you didn't know anything about the cattle business and you just happened to walk in there, you might hear that auctioneer go, $1.20, one, get it down, take it down, 3, get it down, 4, 5, here, down, sold, $1.24. And you go, $1.24? They sold those cattle for $1.24. It's per pound.
Yeah.
So those cattle there's actually a scale.
Is there a scale? Okay.
Right here before they come in. And it puts that weight up there so they know exactly how much weight they're bidding on. Those buyers are bidding on that weight, and the dollar is multiplied, whatever the hammer price ends up being, gets multiplied by that weight. So if they bring $1.25 and
It weighed 350 pounds.
yeah, say whatever they weigh, multiply it by $1.25, that's what that cow costs per head.
Have you sold that way too?
I have, but I don't very often. Like I said, that's the guys that sell the sale barns Monday through Friday.
And that's for all the head there pounds?
Yeah, so let's just say, anybody really good with math, let's say there's 10 head in there. There's more than that, but for easy math, say there's 10 head in there. They weigh 500 apiece. What is that? 5,000 pounds. 5,000 pounds. Let's say they bring $1 for easy math. Let's say they bring $1 a pound. That's $5,000. Okay. You got to be pretty quick on the calculator when you figure, well, those are $1.78 and they weighed $8.73.
Yeah.
I can't do that in my head. Some guys can. The really good guys can. But anyway, you're bidding on all that weight times whatever the hammer price ends up being. As you go back in the back, you know, it looks something like this. Cattle just, you know, strode all throughout the deal. Anybody that's been here from out of town, have you been down to the stockyards in Fort Worth? Used to be a big, huge, what we call the terminal market. It's kind of touristy now, but anyway.
Did you get the preview?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, with that said, so like the cattle I took to Decatur Livestock today, anybody that shows up there this evening, in the morning, can look at my cattle. But a lot of those cattle that they'll sell tomorrow won't get there till 9:30 in the morning. And they won't get a very good preview. Those guys won't see those until they come through the ring. But yeah, all the cattle that get received tonight and in the morning, you can go through there and look at them. So there, yeah.
There it is.
Like I said, I hadn't done these slides in a long time. I forgot that was in there. So there, yeah, there's an example. Good price, 500-pound calf, brings $1.70. Total price was $850. Now that's not exactly what the producer's going to get because the sale barn's got to take their commission out.
Commission.
Depending on how long the cattle were there, they might get some hay and yardage fees and so forth. So that, you know, that check might be something like $817.37 by the time the sale barn gets done. But, you know, they got to make money too. So that's how that works in the commercial sale barn part of the industry. And as an auctioneer, if you're one of those, some things that you need to know. First of all, if you want to get hired, unless you own the barn yourself, you're going to have to get to know whoever owns the barn, whoever does the hiring. And I get a lot of guys that come through auction school, they want to be an auctioneer, they haven't been to auction school yet. They go, man, how do I get hired? I want to sell at my local sale barn. I said, well, do you know the owner? Well, no, my dad knows him, but I don't really know him. I said, well, he's not going to hire you just because he's heard about you. You're going to have to build some trust with that guy, because he's responsible for selling a couple of $1 million worth of cattle that day for his local customers. He's not going to turn that job over to somebody that he doesn't trust. So if you don't have his trust, if you haven't built a relationship with him, he's not going to hire you. It's that simple. So you'll hear us talk a lot about relationships in this business. I tell people all the time, even not people that necessarily want to get in the auction business, but other customers that are getting in the cattle business, say, it's as much a people business as it is a cattle business. And the same with the auction business. The auction business is as much a people business as it is an auction business. You might be one of the most talented auctioneers on the planet, but if you don't have a relationship with the guy that's going to hire you, it doesn't matter how good you are. That guy has got to trust in you, believe in you. How do you get to do that? You show up. Who was it? Somebody famous, Will Rogers, somebody said 90% of success is just showing up. So anyway, get to know the guys that are going to hire you. Who's your audience? Do you have a relationship with those guys? I'll go to Decatur Sale Barn tomorrow, and I'll know half the guys in there. Not that I'm trying to get a job there. I know those guys. I'm in that industry. And I'll shake hands with them, and we'll talk about the weather. We'll talk about how dry it is. We'll talk about what calves are bringing in Kansas versus what they're bringing in Texas, and what we're going to do about these packers that are controlling the market, this, that, and other. I know those guys. They know me. They trust me. If you want to be in that circle, you got to get to know those guys, and you got to be able to talk intelligently with them about the industry, because that's who they're going to end up trusting. Then what is your role in the auction? Well, a lot of sale barns hire the auctioneer to establish the market. They'll hire an auctioneer and they'll say, all right, I want you to auction off all the cattle, but also want you to start them. We've kind of gotten away from that, and most sale barn owners have hired somebody else to start the cattle, but I know still some auctioneers today that will come, show up, sell cattle. They know the market so well that a 500-pound calf comes in there that's black and smooth. They know that calf's, steer calf is worth $1.65 to $1.70 right now, and they'll start it at $1.55, and that's their start. And if nobody else bids, they'll put it on the barn account or whatever. But they started, the good ones, the smart ones, the ones who've been doing it a long time, are smart enough to know where to start it so that somebody else is going to bid. So like I said, a lot of them are hired to establish the market. Your key role is to bring buyers and sellers together, and then your other key role is to set the pace of the auction. You walk in a sale barn and you talk to the sale barn owner and say, how many heads you got back here today? So, we got 1,400. If you want to do the math, how many of those do you have to sell an hour to keep from being there till midnight?
Yeah. So
that's why you go in most sale barns, in Texas, anywhere else for that matter, and people love to listen to that auctioneer because he's usually pretty fast. And they got to be when they got that many cattle. Yeah. I used to work at a sale barn when I was at college. That's how I paid my way through college. I was working in the back, penning cattle. And Navasota at the time, which is down south of College Station, in the fall we'd have 4,000 calves. And that auctioneer was selling 4 a minute. So, you sit up there and go, Tommy and Tatum took 2 T's and Tyler took all 3s, and boom, that quick, that calf is sold 15 seconds. Boom, sold 4 a minute. It's going to be, I would be disingenuous if I told any of you, unless you grew up in the business, you're already talented and not talented, but already filling that role, that you're going to get to step in and do that at this point. That takes a lot of years of experience. And so what are you doing in those years to build trust and build experience? Show up at the sale barn, let that owner know, hey, I want to help you any way I can. I don't necessarily have to go sit in the block behind the microphone right now. Maybe you need somebody to write tickets. Maybe you need somebody on horseback in the back, penning cattle, whatever. Let them know you're interested, get involved in the industry if you don't ever want to sit behind the microphone. They're just not going to hire you right out of auction school to do that, and hopefully you can see why and the level you've got to be at before you can take on that role. A lot of other stuff that you need to know, product knowledge, terminology. You walk in a sale barn, and if you can't, every industry's got its terminology. John back here, I was on a committee with John, and John is a brilliant technology computer guy, and they would be using these technology terms, and we'd be on a Zoom call or whatever, and John would be talking, and I'd be over on Googling this term he used so I would know what he was talking about. It's the same in the cattle business. We'll use terms that we don't even think about that nobody else knows, but if you're talking to a guy and he says, yeah, there's a set of cows over there, short solid, well, short solid, what's that? Well, if you don't know that has to do with their teeth, and their teeth have to do with how old they are, then they're going to pick up pretty quick that you don't know the industry. So you got to know the industry, you got to know the terminology, you got to know a lot about animal health. You get a set of calves through there, and the guy says, hey, have these had 7-way shots, and have they been wormed, and this, that, and other, and you don't know what all that involves, they're going to pick up on it pretty quick that you don't know what you're talking about. So you got to have a lot of product fertility. Fertility in the purebred business is really key. Maybe not so much so in the commodity business, because all those cattle are going to eventually get consumed, but in the purebred business, first thing a guy calls me and says, hey, I'm looking at this cow in your catalog, and it doesn't say how far bred she is. Oh, sorry, we left that out. She's 7 months bred. She'll calve in April, or she'll calve in March. Okay. That's key. That's very important in the cattle business. Age, I talked about it a minute ago. I kind of already cued you in, but anybody else know how we determine age on teeth? Age on cattle? I just gave it away. Yeah. So cattle have one row of teeth. They don't have top and bottom. They have one row of teeth. And think about it. When a cow eats, she gets down there and she grabs a clump of grass and she chews on it, chews on it, chews on it, swallows it, and goes down her rumen, and her rumen does some disgusting things to it, and then she burps it back up and she chews on it some more. Well, when she grabs that grass off the ground, she's probably picking up some dirt and some sand and whatnot, and when she does that for 8-9 years in a row, it grinds her teeth down. So you can take a cow, you can open her mouth, and if she's got real short teeth, she's an older cow. If she's got real long teeth, she's a younger cow. So again, there's things you need to know about in the cattle business as an auctioneer that people are going to ask you about that you need to be able to discuss knowledgeably. Regulations and licenses, we won't go into a great deal of detail about that. I know Mike will have somebody that usually has somebody from the TDLR that comes in and talks about that. But sale barn auctioneers, so if you're just selling at a sale barn, at a commercial sale barn every week, in Texas, you don't have to have a license. A lot of people didn't know that. You're already covered and regulated by it used to be called the Packers and Stockyards, now it's called GIPSA, Grain Inspection Packers Stockyards Act, whatever. They regulate auction barns. They can go in, show up unannounced at any time, ask to see the sale barn owner's books and records, their escrow account. They can audit it. They can send a guy back there to check the scales to make sure the scales are accurate. And if there's anything hanky-panky going on with the auctioneer, that's who's going to find out about it, and that's who's going to enforce it. Now, I recommend, even if you just want to sell sale barns, going ahead in Texas and getting a license, because say a guy shows up and the sale barn owner's friends with him, and he's got a plow on the back of his truck, and he goes, hey, can y'all auction that off before the sale starts? Yeah, sure. That's not covered, and you got to have a license to sell that. So you might as well get your license. And invariably, somebody's going to hear you at the sale barn and go, man, I really like that auctioneer. I think, we're going to retire here in a year, and I think we're going to sell all our equipment and everything. Let's hire that sale barn auctioneer. If you don't have a license, you can't do it. So I recommend going ahead and going through the license process. All right, so here is a little more my environment. This is a typical purebred registered seed stock cattle sale. You can see we got a Hereford bull in the ring. That's the auctioneer. That's a guy named Stanley Stout that I was talking about earlier, who was one of my instructors, who got to be one of my good, close personal friends. His son is now, he's passed away, but his son and I are really good friends. There's your ticket writer. That's actually the owner of the ranch right there. And this guy right here is one of the ringmen. And there's probably 3 or 2 or 3 others standing around ringside taking bids. That's the typical environment of a purebred cattle auction. That auctioneer is not selling by weight. He's not, you walk in there and he's not going to be saying, I'm at $1.20, 1, 2, 3, get it done 4, 5, sold $1.24. He's selling that bull, and right now I had a bull sale yesterday in Oklahoma. They averaged right at $5,000, and so he's probably saying 4,000, 42.5, 45 at a down, 7.5, $5,000, 100 down, sold $4,750, and that's $4,750 for that bull. Not selling by weight, selling by the head. Key difference in commercial cattle and purebred cattle. And again, this is the world I live in most days.
What's your average number of head you run through in a day?
Man, it'd be hard to say an average. Yesterday, we had 125 head. I did one back in October where we had 650 head of bulls, one at a time. So by the head, the seed stock purebred sales are not near as big as a typical weekly sale barn sale. That sale in Decatur tomorrow will probably be 1,000, 1,200 head. Yes, sir.
How come your specialty is this, but you sell your cattle at the commercial sale?
Because I have commercial cattle.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't have purebred cattle, because if I did, I'd be competing with my customers. And purebred, I'd buy a bull from somebody, one of my other customers would say, hey, how come you bought a bull from him and not me?
Not me.
I stay out of the seed stock business. Personally, myself, I just raise commercial cattle. And you can't sell my cattle on one of these.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was under the impression you'd also raise the commercial cattle since you knew them so well.
Yeah, no. If I ever retire from auctioneering, I probably will. But right now, it's too much of a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
To do that. You bet. We'll talk about this guy here in a minute, but keep him in mind. His name is Terry Reagan. He owns a newspaper called the Ranchers Exchange, which I don't know if I've got one of his, but I've got some papers. Anyway, keep that guy in mind. We'll talk about him in a minute. So anyway, there's that environment. So we talk about location. That sale barn, that's a fixed facility in Decatur where they have that sale right there every week. They got pens and they got everything. They got everything they need to have an auction. Purebred sales, we like to have those. My preference is to have them on the ranch. I think if you can get your customers to come to your ranch, see how you do business, see how you keep your place, that just instills a lot more confidence in them to buy your product. But we're not always able, sometimes we're just not set up to do it at a ranch, so we have to do it other places. But my preference is always to have it on the farm or the ranch. But sometimes we'll disperse a guy and he'll have 1,500 or 2,000 head, and we're just not set up to do all that on the ranch. So we'll go rent the local sale barn, have it on a day where they're not having their regular sale. I've had sales in convention centers. I've had a lot of sales at fairgrounds, agriculture centers. I'm sorry? I'm getting to that. Hotel ballrooms, like the story I told, first one I ever did was in a hotel ballroom. There have been sales on luxury cruise ships. There was a guy back in the 80s that got real innovative. He put together a group of really good cattle. He videoed them, and this was way before video got popular. He videoed everything, and the cattle were not physically on the cruise ship. He sold the cruises to all these potential customers. He had a deal with the cruise line that if he sold, so many cruises to everybody else, his was free. So he's going on these free cruises. He's getting you to come on a cruise and bring your family and whatnot. And while you're there, so you can write it off, he has an auction in one of the ballrooms, and they sell some cattle on the video.
Unbelievable. That is so cool.
It was really an innovative deal, but he was kind of a shyster, and it was a novel idea. There was one, I've only heard of one, but there was one Beefmaster sale back in the 80s in flight on a 747.
That's badass.
Yeah, the auctioneer was set up there in the front of the plane. Once they got to cruising altitude, he had a little microphone, and people were just sitting down through the seats, and they were sitting there bidding, and they had the screens where you could see them. Actually, I've only heard about one of those. Now, technology, even since I've done these slides are, gosh, what do you think?
Cyberspace.
20 years old. The internet was just coming about when I made these slides 20 or 30 years ago. But now it's commonplace to do it on the internet and so forth, but that was kind of cool 20 years ago. Let me think about this for a minute.
Cable TV.
Yeah. So anyway, again, these are
20 years ago.
not novel anymore. These are kind of standard. The sale I did yesterday was broadcast on a channel called Superior Productions. Just in case you hadn't seen how that works, we were set up in a barn. We've gotten to where we don't run cattle through the ring hardly anymore. We have a professional videographer come video them 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the time. We put that image up on a video screen. That's what the buyers are sitting there looking at. The Superior guy had his own table set up over there, and he's got all his computers and wires and everything going every which way. He's sending a feed back to Fort Worth. Superior's located in Fort Worth. They run that feed through their TV channel, and you may have been sitting around sometime cable or flipping through the channels on your TV and heard an auctioneer and seen a cattle auction. That's something like Superior do. Anyway, the one we did yesterday was on Superior. So there's several companies that do that now. Western Livestock Market, Northern Livestock Market all do those video auctions like that. And then there's I'm assuming everybody's heard companies like Proxy Bid and that sort of thing. There are those kind of companies, though, that specialize just in livestock. They don't do anything else. They just do livestock. DV Auction's one of them. There's one called LiveAuctions.tv that just got bought by Superior, by the way. So Superior owns it. Cattle USA, LMA. Anyway, these are all livestock-specific bidding platforms on the internet. So unless you had an interest in cattle and livestock, you probably wouldn't have found these. Anyway, all those do a great job. I work with all of them. So let's talk about real quick having challenges to have. Yes, ma'am.
Did you want to show me?
Is that slide? Sure. Just so you can see how one works. This is probably really old too.
It's all right.
I'm not sure I remember.
You see it?
Yeah. So that's Superior.
I've got
It was
DV
their-
screen. That one.
That's their auction. They're not there anymore. They moved down the street. But that's their studio. That's Superior Studio. And you can see the auctioneers right here. These are all your buyers. There's a booth over here. You can't see it, but the technology and audio booth is right over here. And the audio guys there handling the problems. Will that play?
Yes.
What do you need to do to play?
It'll play. I was just waiting for you to.
Anybody ever heard of Ralph Wade? That's him. So anybody been channel surfing and ever come across this on TV?
Yeah.
I don't know what it all means because I don't know what I'm having.
What a job.
I can listen to him all day, but that's go ahead, shut off.
That's so.
That's actually a feeder calf auction. That wasn't a purebred auction like what I did yesterday. They were selling feeder cattle on that. So a guy would go to the ranch and video this set of, say, 40 or 50 calves walking by. They put that video up there, and that's what everybody's watching on TV, and they're doing that in the studio. Superior also goes on site and does auctions like the one I did yesterday, as well as those other companies I talked about. And there's even more now since I made that slide 20 years ago.
I don't think you have anything going on here either. The show?
I don't think so.
Okay. Darn.
I think back in the day, you could have clicked one of these and it would
Take
go
you
on.
back.
But again, that's so many years ago.
Okay.
It'd be a dead link now, I'm sure.
All righty. Well, y'all got to see that one.
Yeah.
Let me see your little thing. There you go. Oh,
But when all of that first came out, and I'll say this, the cattle business was doing innovative things like this long before Proxy Bid, Bid Wrangler, and all of those came along. We were doing this kind of stuff in the cattle business back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And you would think it would be the opposite,
Right.
right?
You'd think
Just because of the
Right, exactly. So
old school mentality
It's like
type
third
pat us
thing.
on the back, us cattle
That's
guys,
really
'cause
awesome, yeah.
We were doing this a long time ago. And like I said, we've progressed to the point now where we have these livestock-specific bid platforms. And I'm involved in the NAA and the TAA, and I know a lot of these guys that have these proxy bid platforms and Bid Wrangler, and I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. I know a lot of those guys, and some of them will call me and go, hey, why don't you let us try to do one of your auctions? And I'm like, well, it's audience specific. So I know that if I do an auction on DV Auction, they're gonna send out an e-blast to 35,000 cattlemen that Proxy Bid's not gonna have access to. Now, granted, Proxy Bid's got a much larger database, but they're gonna be sending it out to people that buy rare coins and fine art and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't want to send them an e-blast. I want my e-blast to be specific and go to my cattle guys. And I know one of these companies, if I use them to do my auction, are going to do that. So anyway, did we get through that?
Can I,
Yes, sir.
are you tied in, are you independent as far as you choose which one you use, or do you work underneath one of those companies?
I guess full disclosure, I had been affiliated with DV. I used to be a rep for them, and I still own a very, very, very small piece of equity in DV, because I helped get it started. But I, Superior bought live auctions. I did one with them 2 weeks ago. I've done some last year with Cattle USA. I've done a lot with LMA. I do a lot with Superior. Like I said, these are all competitors. And so
In that purebred circuit you were talking about of the judge, you said, I don't remember how many you said earlier, but there's not a real big group of purebred auctioneers. Are they all kind of like you? They use all of them?
we use all of them. And we basically, sometimes we have a little input into the decision, but it's primarily the owner of the ranch that's having the auction. It's his decision. We make recommendations and we'll consult with him on it, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's his choice. I don't push any of them one way or the other. I like all of them. I tell you, that Superior yesterday was incredible. I bet we sold out of 125 bulls. I bet we sold 40 of them on Superior.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. They did a great job yesterday.
Is that common? So you'd have 125 lots, but only 40 of them would sell?
No, 40 of them sold on Superior. Was a
also
bidder that was logged into Superior bought 40 of them. Or I say a bidder, there was probably 10 bidders that bought online.
Because they're selling on different
I
platforms.
also had people from the crowd buy it.
Okay, thank you.
But I probably had 10 different ranchers that were watching on Superior that bought
I misunderstood.
40 of the bulls out of 125 were sold online.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, no problem. So there's some other challenges to farm auctions. If the rancher doesn't have a barn or whatever set up to have an auction, sometimes we have to bring in a tent, pen, sail ring, bleachers, PA system, and so forth, and that can bring some challenges. We had a really bright light sale, I'm gonna say 20 years ago. We got he wanted to have it under a tent. We set up the tent, had the caterer already set up, the PA, the sail ring, and they said it wasn't a tornado, but it was 80-mile-an-hour wind came through there and just blew everything down. And we got there that morning going, what do we do now? So we improvised and we made it work. But anyway, that can present some challenges. The internet's a huge challenge sometimes to us if we want to broadcast it on one of these online platforms, is getting enough bandwidth to be able to broadcast
in Texas.
that. John can tell you sometimes on those calls that we would have, they go, Dope, did we lose you? Did we lose you? Yeah, I'm in Decatur, sorry. So that's been a challenge, but we work around it when we can. A lot of times, the ranch does not have enough labor, cowboys, to move all the cattle and do everything, so we got to bring in extra help to do that. There's always liability issues that you got to think about. Some ranchers, and most of them that require this, have some kind of corporate background, but I do have guys that say, I need a copy of your liability policy, and I go, and I don't have a blanket umbrella of liability policy that covers me, so I'll have to go buy a policy specific to that auction, and it's not bad, it's usually $300, you can get one to do whatever you need, but
So they won't put you under their umbrella with their policy?
no.
They want a separate
Sometimes
policy?
guys want me to have mine.
Have your own?
Yeah, so if somebody slips and falls, or
Yeah.
cow jumps out, and
Somebody fall off a horse?
stomps on, whatever. Weather risk, like that, talk about that. But you know, you want to watch the weather pretty good if you're going to put up a tent. So let's talk about breeds of cattle real quick. There are right now over 140 breeds of cattle just in the United States that we've got to work with. But really, you boil it down, and there's probably only about 7 or 8 that are relative enough to have their own breed association, to have their own magazine, to have their own field staff. You know, Hereford Angus, Charolais Brahma, you may or may not, everybody's probably heard of Angus. The Angus breed is by far the largest breed in America. They register more cattle than all the other breeds combined. So that tells you how big it is. But you know, like if you've had a registered dog, you know, you register it with the AKC, American Kennel Club. They handle all that registration work and paperwork and so forth. And you'll get you know, if you have a registered parentage on both sides of that dog, you'll get a paper in the mail that shows the pedigree, and this dog is registered with AKC. It's different in the cattle business. We're just more, I don't know, separatists, but every breed has its own association. We don't have one giant breed that handles all of it. And again, Angus is by far the biggest one. Hereford is pretty substantial in the U.S. Charolais, that's a breed of cattle we imported over here from France in the early 70s. Brahmans, those are what we call Bos Indicus cattle. They're primarily cattle that were raised south of the equator. They have longer ears, they have this hump, and they have all this leather underneath, and that gives them the ability to process heat easier than the tight-hided cattle that came from Great Britain or from Europe. These cattle work really good in Texas and the southeast, but I wouldn't want a set of them in Montana in the winter. You know, they don't do very well in the winter, just like a lot of Angus and Hereford cattle don't necessarily do as good in South Texas in July. So different breeds of cattle fit different environments, and as cattle breeders, we try to utilize those genetics to produce the optimum cattle for our region. These are some other, you know, breeds. I sell a lot of Brangus sales. Brangus is what we call a composite breed. So it's 3/8 Brahman. So 3/8 of the genetics come from this guy, and 5/8 of the genetics come from the Angus breed. So it's a 3/8, 5/8 composite breed. It's a very popular breed in the South, in Texas, the Southeast, Florida. Beefmaster is also a composite breed. Gelbvieh, Simmental, those are European breeds brought over. Santa Gertrudis is an interesting breed. That breed was developed on the King Ranch in Texas. It is, I can't remember the percentages now, but it's part Brahman, part Hereford, part Shorthorn. So it's actually a 3-breed composite. And then you have some really weird cattle out there. Beefalo is a combination of bovine and buffalo. These Belgian blues, we call them the bodybuilders in the cattle business. They're real double muscled almost. The studies I've seen on the meat, while it might look like they produce a big volume of meat, it eats like shoe leather. It's real tough because they don't put on any fat. You can see there's no fat on the outside of that guy, and so there's not going to be any intermuscular fat, which we call marbling. And you know, if you got a carcass that doesn't have any marbling, it's not going to eat very well. Belted Galloways are kind of, we call those the Oreos. And Chianinas, you can't really tell from this picture, but back in the 80s, all the college professors told us our cattle weren't tall enough. So we imported these cattle from Italy. Chianinas are from Italy, and they're huge. If there was a 6-foot man standing behind this, you couldn't see him. You couldn't see the top of his head. So we infused those genetics to try to get these cattle bigger. Then the college professors came around and said, well, we got them too big now. And so
Oh, my God.
once we got them too big, everybody quit using Keenings. Longhorns, they're kind of a novelty breed. I've done a handful of Longhorn sales. They're kind of big in Fort Worth, here in Fort Worth Stock Show. And the best, I don't know much about Longhorns as far as their pedigrees and genetics. Best I can tell, talking to the guys out in the alley before the auction starts, all they care about is from here forward. They could care less what the, from the neck back looks like. All they want to know is what the horn configuration is. That's what they're breeding for. Now, the origination of them was back in the 1860s in the cattle drive days. They're actually of Mexican origin, and they're really tough cattle. They're very durable. And those cattle could survive the long cattle drives from South Texas to middle of Kansas to where they dropped them off. And they, like I said, they lived where a lot of Angus cattle and Hereford cattle couldn't make that drive. The Longhorns are very tough, very durable. That's where they found their best use, was back then. Today, they're just kind of a novelty. Wagyus, everybody's probably at this point had some Wagyu, Akushi, whatever, meat. Very interesting breed, originated in Japan. Over there, they feed them a very interesting diet, includes beer. So if you're going to be a cow, not a bad idea to be one in Japan. They feed them beer. They have handlers that go out and massage the muscles every day to keep the connective tissue broke up, and they are very tender. If you've ever had it, it's very tender. We've imported a lot of those cattle over here and blended them with Angus genetics, and a lot of guys are breeding Wagyu Angus and getting a more desirable carcass. So they're finding their place.
Are there some Wagyu, pure Wagyu ranches around?
Yeah, there's several now. Several. So it's kind of hard to get a cow from Japan to the United States. So what a lot of guys have done is bought semen and embryos,
and
brought it over here, and bred it to cows here, and upgraded those through that way. So let's talk about pedigrees for a minute. So you heard me talk about AKC. If you have a dog that's registered, you're going to get a paper in the mail. Well, if you have this is a Red Angus paper. So if you breed Red Angus cattle, and you have a calf and he's pretty good, you decide to keep him, you're going to register him. He's out of a bull that's registered. He's out of a cow that's registered. You're going to send that information to the Red Angus Association, and the Red Angus Association is going to run it through their computer, and they're going to spit out a paper that looks like this, and they're going to send it back to you, and then you're going to say, here, I have this animal's registered. It is registered with the Red Angus Association. A lot of information on here. Again, this slide's 20 years old. That paper would not look that way today. There'd be even more information on it today. But right here is the dad, the father. We call it the sire in the cattle business. So that's the bull that sired this calf. So this calf is Brown Marbler P6446. And he actually sits out here. So this is his father or his sire. This is his mother, or what we call the dam. That's not a cuss word, that's just what you call a cow. This is the dam, and if you want to follow the pedigree on back, that would be the paternal grandsire. This is the maternal granddam. Paternal granddam, maternal grandsire, maternal granddam. Go on back as far as they've been keeping records, and you can trace back. So what separates a purebred cattle guy, a really good one, from just a rancher, a commercial rancher, is the really good ones that, and I'm not putting myself in this category, but I study these pedigrees to know what works. And the great breeders, what we call master breeders, they have photographic memories, and they can just memorize this stuff, and they know that this bull right back here won the National Western in Denver back in 1987. And his genetics works real good with the genetics of some other cow that he's got that he's traced back, and he's blended those genetics, and like I said, the master breeders just really know how to breed cattle.
Are they starting to use DNA in a lot of that too now?
Yeah. You can pull hair off of the tail of a cow. The DNA is used more for identification than breeding predictability. So if you've got a set of cows and your neighbor's bull jumped the fence and bred a couple of them. And so you weren't sure when that calf hit the ground if it was really sired by the bull you thought it was sired by. You can pull the hair on the tail, or you can get it from several places. Send it off to a lab, and they will tell you with a 99.999% probability what bull that calf is sired by.
So do you use that in some of your sales then to ensure the buyers?
Yeah. A lot of cattle are getting DNA tested, and then this is getting animal science 404. But yes, to answer your question, they are using it for predictability in EPDs, what we call expected progeny differences, which is big old hairy calculations that these guys have come up with. But they can identify the genes that produce a heritable trait that we're looking for. So to keep it simple, you look at all this data, you go, what is all that? Let's use birth weight as an example, okay? In the purebred business, birth weight is a very heritable trait. So we want to make sure that we're breeding cattle that aren't too big in the womb where the cow has trouble laying down and having the calf. So ideally, we want a calf to weigh about 70 to 75 pounds. That's not too big, it's not too small. If it's too small, then it doesn't have a head start. If it's too big, if it's 100 pounds at birth or 110 pounds, there's a chance it could kill the cow. The cow just couldn't push it out, it's too big. So that trait is very important. When you're having a bull sale, one of the first things a potential customer will ask me is, how are the birth weights on these bulls? And of course, we've got it all through the pedigrees and through the paperwork, and I can tell them, oh, these are all light birth weight bulls or whatever. So that's a very heritable trait, and we can now predict that before we ever breed a bull to a cow. We can predict what that calf's birth weight EPD is going to be through genetics, through the genetic testing. And again, it's way beyond what I think anybody in this room would want to know. Well, some of you guys that are in the seed stock business would know, but I don't want to get too far off in the weeds. But I see where you're going. It's a good question, and if you want to learn more about it, I'm not the expert, but I can have a discussion about it. Yes, sir.
There was a deal I saw last year, and it's up close to us, but they had Angus deal did a show at that high school in Wildoretta, Texas, where they started an ag program, and they did a registered bull sale, and they put those kids in charge of all that. And they took several kids that knew nothing about cattle, but got them in, showed them how to read EPDs and all that. Really interesting documentary that's out there that I mean, if any of y'all want to watch it, it's
what's it called?
Do you know what it's on?
I haven't seen it. What's it called?
It's called Wildoretta, I think. That's why I was trying to look it up so I could tell you the title of it. But it's about this ag. They started a new school there at Wildoretta. The school had actually been closed and consolidated. They got a wind farm built in their high school. They're trying to do something unique, so they started this ag program.
At the high school level, that's really good. Oklahoma State has a program like that. If you're an animal science student, you can take a class at OSU that you actually produce an auction.
That's awesome.
You go through the whole process. What I'm giving you in a crash course in 60 minutes, they do a whole semester. But anyway, that piece of paper is very important in our business. And as an auctioneer, if you want to be successful in the breeds that you're selling, you're going to have to familiarize yourself with this piece of paper on all the animals that you're going to sell in a particular sale. I brought some of these. So another big difference in the sales I do and a commercial sale barn. This is a sale I did yesterday in Elk City, Oklahoma. It wasn't very big. And you can see that's the index. Every lot, some of them we got pictures, but every lot's got a pedigree, it's got performance data down there. I use all that when I'm on the microphone to help enhance the value of that animal. If there's,
who's responsible for putting that magazine together when the sale goes in?
The sale manager usually. If the rancher doesn't use a sale manager, then he's either got staff that does it or subcontractors that do it.
So an auctioneer himself would probably not put a sale like that.
I don't put these together. I used to when I worked for the sale management company, but now. That's one of the reasons I'm not so manager business, because I don't like doing this.
That's like the company you said that didn't have the auctioneer. That's what they were.
That's what we did. Yeah, we put catalogs together. We did all the. This is basically marketing. And so we did all the marketing that goes into a sale. Here's, I thought I grabbed one that was, yeah. So here's an Angus sale, really big time Angus sale out in California. You see full color pictures. This thing was very expensive to produce, very time consuming to produce. And then it probably cost more than all of that just to mail it. And they probably mailed it out to 2,000 potential.
So when you do those sales, then you before you sell that lot, you're going through all that and explaining all that to them, or they just look at the catalog and they got it all?
Yeah, I'm using a yellow highlighter and I just highlight the high points. And I only use that if I need to. If I get a lull in the market or I feel like an animal's not bringing its potential, I might stop and look down at my notes real quick and pick up the yellow highlighter and say, hey guys, this, this got a carcass intermuscular fat factor of 0.6 or whatever, something that is going to get their attention that they say, oh, I didn't see that. And hopefully enhance the value of whatever I'm selling. Here's another Pollard, they're up in Oklahoma. Real nice catalog, very thick. So, yes, I've got this up in the block with me while I'm doing the sale. I'm thumbing through it, each lot, I look at if there's some kind of highlight on there that, I think will enhance the value of that animal. I'd say it quickly in my chant, 18 get it, 19 get it down. Hey, look at the birth weight on this one, 19 get it down too, 2,100. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Make sense? Good question. Yes,
Follow up to Monty's, he found it's called Wildorado I Am Angus, and another thing that I found was called Making the Wildorado Cattle Company.
So the Wildorado I Am Angus is probably on YouTube. Because that's a YouTube series that the Angus Association put together and promoted, and that's another function of these breed associations is to market that breed, and the Angus Association they do it better than anybody. And that's a whole series. You can go to YouTube and type I Am Angus, and I bet there's 100 videos of stories of Angus breeders, of people in the industry that promote Angus cattle. There's one on there of my mentor, a guy named Ray Sims. If you ever heard the auctioneer song, there was a boy from Arkansas, that was written about Ray Sims. And there's an I Am Angus video about Ray, where they interviewed him there at his house and everything. It's really cool. So if you get bored and want to learn more about it, if you're ever at auctioneers, I would recommend you want to do that. So anyway, a lot of these questions have been asked. You guys are ahead of the game. Preparation for a purebred cattle auction. Like I said, it's different than the one tomorrow at Decatur Livestock. They have some ongoing advertising tomorrow, and they get on the phone, they call a lot of guys, but they don't do all of this. So when we have one of those sales, like I showed you the catalog for, we're putting a catalog together, which is a great form of advertising, but we're also advertising it specifically to a target market. I'm not going to take out an ad in the antique world to advertise my Angus bull sale in Oklahoma. I'm going to take out an ad in some of these livestock papers. I'll pass some of these around if you want to look at them. So this one's called the Stock Exchange. It's a livestock paper published out of Oklahoma. It's got some great editorial in there, a lot of ads for sales. And if I've got a sale somewhere close to Oklahoma, I'm going to have an ad in here. Y'all want to pass that around? Here's one published out of Fort Worth, Texas, called the Weekly Livestock Reporter. Same deal, got a great coverage in North Texas, Central Texas, Oklahoma. If I've got a purebred sale in that region, I'm probably going to have an ad or recommend that my client have an ad in that publication. Here's one called Southern Livestock Standard. This one's published out of San Antonio. If I'm having a sale down in South Texas, anywhere from Waco south, I'm probably going to recommend an ad in this publication right here. You'll pass this around. So we talked about, let's see, illustrate this. So here's a magazine put out by the Brangus Association. Okay, it's folded, got staples as a binder, and it's a nice publication, it's full color, but the Brangus breed is not all that big. It's a lot of full color ads. Here is the Angus Journal, the same month. It's a lot
Oh,
thicker.
that's a
It's got
pretty
a binder.
looking book.
It's, 200 or 300 pages. Yeah, 300 pages, a lot of full color ad, great editorial.
Southwest Cattle Raisers, don't they advertise sales in it?
Great question.
Yeah.
That's TSCRA's
Yeah.
publication right there. That's kind of a all breeds publication published by the Texas Southwest Cattle Raisers Association. Very nice, full color, a lot of full color in there. Anyway, these are the kind of publications, you may want to see these, you want me to pass them around? That we will advertise in.
Fertility.
Do what?
How to manage the common challenges of bull fertility.
There you go. Good,
It's
good
so-
bathroom reading right there.
Yeah.
Here's one more called the Gulf Coast Cattleman. It's got a great coverage from the name Gulf Coast. So Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama,
Yeah.
Florida, Georgia,
Oh.
Gulf Coast of Texas.
The cattle
Great.
deal's kind of good, too. I mean, they're still in print a lot more than a lot of other things, don't you? I mean,
Yeah, we
print's
still
got
use a lot of
regional
print.
People just sit here and just look.
We still do, we still use a lot of
Love
print.
this.
Because a lot of, your demographics of your average rancher is about 68 years old. And they like
Just like they
something to
look at
touch,
the
see, feel.
tractor you're selling?
They don't like pulling out their cell phone and going.
They don't like trying to read on their phone, they don't even like trying to read it on an iPad or a laptop. They want to
I know,
see,
yeah.
they still want to see that publication.
Everybody always thinks.
So that's why those livestock
My dad
publications
told
have
me, if I
survived,
read it, where's the?
whereas a lot of other
That's how I was
industries.
raised.
But we'll use a lot of other different mediums for advertising. We do a little bit, we recommend a little bit sometimes in your local newspaper, radio. The sale I did yesterday was in Elk City, Oklahoma. Elk City's not that big, but it's got a radio station.
Wall
And the ranch manager's daughter is like 10 years old. She's just cute as a
How
button.
cool.
And she still kind of talks like a kid. And they get her to make the radio commercials. And so she'll get on there and she'll say, come to our, ranch, come to Hudson Angus on January the 22nd. We're selling 125 Angus bulls, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's just cute as it can be. And they put that on the radio and it runs during the farm shows. And they said that's probably, from a local standpoint, they get more calls off of that radio ad than they do for all this other stuff. So,
Plus, it's, they don't have to pay her.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't have to.
You didn't let it roll on it, remember, Mike?
No, I didn't do that, but they don't have much of a talent fee in that. So anyway, again, these slides are old, but the internet was huge, was starting to get huge, and it's just continued to get really huge. And I wish I had time to sit and listen to John, because John is a genius on internet marketing, Google and all that kind of stuff. Y'all really need to take good notes when he's.
Denton took notes for you.
Huh?
Denton took notes.
Yeah, there you go. Bring those home, let me read what John has to say. But John, there's guys out there that you could hire that really, really know how to target your advertising and marketing on the internet, and I recommend using them. And like I said, we've gotten where we're recommending a lot of that. E-blasts and just Google search and Google AdWords and all this kind of stuff that brings people to your business, to your sale. It's pretty cool. Okay, so Ringman. So way back there, when I said, remember this guy right here?
Yeah.
Okay, he owns a paper like the one I passed around. I don't
Ranchers
think I had.
Exchange.
Yeah, I'm not sure I had his in there. But he owns that paper, and he has a staff of guys that work for him, and they are basically salesmen. They go out and they sell advertising. So they hear about Hudson Angus is having a sale January the 22nd, and they'll call Bert Hudson and go, hey, we hear you have a sale. We'd sure like to run some ads for you, and here's our pricing, and blah, blah, blah. And if you spend enough with us, if you spend $2,500 advertising, we'll send a ring man to work the ring at your auction. And so that's what that guy was doing. He had a big enough budget on that auction that he went to that auction, worked the ring. He knows that auctioneer real well. That auctioneer knows him real well. They probably worked 1,000 sales together. And so it's kind of a team. And a lot of guys will ask me, say, hey, how do you get started in the purebred business? Most, I'd say 80 to 90% of the purebred auctioneers I know got started right there, working for working for this guy, not that guy, but they went to work for this guy. They went to work for a publication, selling ads, working the ring, built their network. They got to know all the ranchers because they were sitting on the seat buying the cattle. They got to know the owners. They got to know the auctioneers. They built their network, and then when they got ready and they were seasoned enough to go out on their own, they went out on their own as an auctioneer. So we love them until they decide to compete with us. Now, like I said, some of my best friends are ringmen that I've traveled all over the country with and worked, like I said, jillions of sales with. But that's how a lot of purebred auctioneers get started, is working for one of these publications or one of these breed associations. A lot of the breed associations do the same thing. But Angus Breed has 12 or 13 what they call regional managers, and those guys are basically selling ads in the Angus Journal, and if you spend enough, they come to your auction and they work for them. All right, so how are we doing on time, Lori? Okay. I'm just winging it. I used to have this
If
down
you need to go,
pat,
just go.
and tell me if I'm running long or short. I think I kind of alluded to this in an earlier slide, but you know, if you're going to, whether you're a purebred auctioneer or sale barn auctioneer, you need to know the health issues that are out there in the industry. Because again, invariably, you're going to have some guy, you know, walk up to you and say, "Hey, these calves pre-conditioned, you know, they had Ivomec and they had blah blah." And if you don't know what, you know, if you're not familiar with all this, you're not going to be able to have an intelligent discussion with them. So we try to keep up to date on all the, you know, possible health issues that are out there. There's one that's not on here now that that can really cause a lot of problem in bulls, is trichomoniasis. And so I get guys that are sending cattle across states to go, "Hey, are the bulls trick tested?" You know, guy calls you up and says, "These bulls trick tested." You don't know what a trick test is, or you don't know what trichomoniasis is. They're going to pick up pretty quick. I need to be talking to somebody else. Everybody remembers the Oprah BSE thing, you know, that was fake news, whatever. But there was a time when that was a big issue in the cattle business, and everything had to be tested for that. Brucellosis is a big one, that's still a big one. We want to make sure, because if brucellosis is a virus, and if it gets through a cow herd, it can make all of them infertile, or they can make all of them abort their calves. And so we vaccinate our heifers at 60 to 90 days of age, and they put a metal tag in their ear, and that metal tag shows that she can go anywhere in the continental United States because she's been Baines vaccinated, and everybody knows she's clear of Baines. So there was a time back in the 70s when Baines was rampant, and it was a huge problem. So to keep that from ever being a problem again, we really take care of that. At all of our sales, there is a veterinarian present, and he or she has written health papers on every animal, and that health paper will accompany that animal. So if you buy lot 33 and you go to the office and pay for 33, they're going to give you a receipt for lot 33, and they're also going to hand you those health papers. And if you're trucking the animal yourself, if you haul a gooseneck to the sale, you got to keep that paper with you. If you're having them hauled by somebody else, you've got to give that health paper to that trucker. If that trucker were to get stopped, if that trucker were to go across state line checkpoint, they're going to want to see the papers on those cattle. So that's another thing that you got to do in preparation for an auction that a lot of people don't even think about, that have never put one on. Okay, product knowledge. We've talked about pedigrees, how important that is to be familiar with those pedigrees. Be, you know, some of the most popular bulls in the Angus breed. I can throw out a name. You know, that's a son of Consensus. You know, and the guys on the seal know what I'm talking about. One of the really great productive bulls in the Angus breed. It's also pretty handy when you got to know the breeders in the crowd, because they're your buyers. But I learned early on that it also helps to know more than just the breeder. So I was doing a sale, I was pretty young, I'd only been doing sales for 2 or 3 years. And this guy from Industry, Texas, named Tiny Harris, he was a big banker, a big construction guy. And he started coming to all our sales and buying, and he was a great buyer. I mean, he'd just sit there and just buying. And, you know, I'd say, "Thank you, Tiny Harris." And one day, he was buying several, and this lady was sitting beside him. I didn't know her, didn't think anything of it. I was focused in on him. And anyway, after the sale was over, it was kind of an elevated sale block, had some stairs going down, and I head down the stairs when the sale's over, and this lady was standing at the bottom of the stairs with her arms folded. Wonder what I did. And so I walked down there, tried to smile, and she said, I want to tell you something, young man. Stuck her finger in my face. She goes, every time Tiny Harris buys a cow, Ann Harris buys a cow. And I said, yes, ma'am. Miss Ann, nice to meet you. And in the future, every time Tiny Harris bought a cow, I would say, thank you, Tiny and Ann Harris.
That's my girl.
So, yeah, that helps. I had a guy that his son was trying to make it in Nashville, and every time he'd buy one, I'd make some kind of joke or whatever about his son, and he bid again. It's just one of those triggers that if I could throw something out there to get his attention and make him smile, he'd go, all right, and he'd bid again. So knowing about your breed, knowing about your family, what's important to them is pretty important. Terminology, again, I think we've hashed that to death. I will tell one quick story. So my beautiful wife is in the back of the room. Wendy, hey, wave your hand. That's my wife, Wendy, world-class IAC champion auctioneer. But when, when we first started dating, so Wendy was raised right in the middle of Fort Worth, Texas, in a neighborhood. She likes to tell everybody, I'm a neighborhood girl. I'm not a country girl, I'm a neighborhood girl. And we were dating, and she went with me to a sale. I think we were in Houston, at the Houston Livestock Show. And after the sale, me and several of my customers went out to eat steak. And your mom was with us, wasn't she? Yeah, somehow her mom was with us. And we're sitting around, me and my cattle guys, and we're talking about semen and embryos and stuff that we don't think, it's just daily conversation in the cattle business. And her mom, it wasn't Wendy, it was her mom, was just appalled. How do you sit around and talk about that kind of stuff at dinner? So there's a terminology boundary, I guess, in the cattle business that goes beyond a lot of other industries. Do what, Glenn?
When you're eating dinner?
Yeah. We don't think anything of it. We talk about AI and cows and palpating cows and all this kind of stuff.
What exactly about the semen are you saying?
Fertility?
Like the consistency?
Yeah, you can. Motility is a big
it's a whole thing. Motility has to probably be.
That's number one.
Motility. Morphology play into it as well?
Yeah. Put it under microscope, make sure it's got lots of
Is there such thing as do you sell just like semen?
That's where I was going, it's a huge market.
It's a huge market.
There'll be a lot of.
So they have like an auction just for that?
We'll auction off straws of semen.
So there's a guy collecting that semen on manually?
Yes. Have you ever seen micros, dirty jobs?
Yeah, they do it. They do it in horses too. They put a dummy and then they.
Not gonna go into detail, but it's kind of a dirty job.
Wasn't that in Yellowstone?
We collect semen on these little vials.
And then you have to collect the semen.
We'll put it in these little straws, and we'll immerse it in liquid nitrogen to keep it frozen, and it'll stay good for years and years, as long as you keep it.
So that's how you're getting a bull from 1978 that's still breathing? Okay.
Exactly. We're artificially inseminating that cow, and I won't go into all the details of how we do that.
It's cool.
I can imagine.
I got a question. So Sam, which was a big Charolais bull, that came out of Chillicothe, Missouri. Jerry Linton.
Jerry Linton,
he died in an airplane crash, but so is that bull still strong in that market?
No, I had seen Sam calf in years.
But
he
got overcome.
Yeah, he produced sons that were better than him, and they used those cattle, and then those sons produced sons better. That's the goal, is you always want to be progressing the generations to make the progeny better than the parentage.
When I was a kid, I ran around in that barn where he kept that bull, and
but we'll sell semen. I sold some semen the other day in Denver. in Oklahoma City for $250 a straw.
Yeah.
It was 100 straws. So
and the bulls love it.
Bulls love what? Oh,
Being
getting collected. Yeah. Well,
they go to.
Well, I've never talked to one, but
I can tell you this.
I got to think, if I was a bull, I'd rather the real.
I've been in the bar. They go.
Just like a dude, you want to go do it in a cup,
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my God.
If you're really interested in this subject, you can go on YouTube and search bull collection,
Yeah.
and it'll show you exactly how they do it. If you want to search artificially inseminate a cow, show
You
you
can watch
exactly
it all.
how they do it. Y'all have already had lunch, and so we
Yes,
should
there's
do
stuff
full
there about
lunch.
how
Yeah,
to do it.
it's
I'm
cool.
very careful about what I talk about.
It's real life, it's cool.
But yeah, but anyway, terminology, all that kind of stuff is very important to be able to navigate your way around the circles with these guys that are going to eventually hopefully hire you. Anyway, those are some of the deals we've already talked about. EPDs, expected pricing difference. You walk in a group of purebred cattle guys and you don't know what an EPD is, they're going to know real quick that you don't know
Eat
what
you
you're,
alive.
you don't know what you're doing. Wean and weight, year and weight, scroll circumference. What is that? Is that
Total
me?
circumference?
Just press okay.
Oh, says you're done.
You just do one drive.
I apologize, what is the EPD again?
Expected progeny difference.
What is that?
So, through a lot of mathematical work and data collection, they have been able to formulate these formulas where we can calculate on a cow what the name says with a number. So say she's got a EPD of 65 for wean weight. So what that 65 means is her calves are going to wean 65 pounds heavier than the breed average. So say the breed average is 500, then her calves, if she's got a 65 pound, if she's got an EPD of 65 for wean weight, those calves are expected. Now it's kind of woo-woo science, some would say, but through all the data they've collected, they're getting pretty good at it to be able to predict that cow's calf will wean 65 pounds higher than the breed average. So that calf, we would expect to wean closer to 565 than 500.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and they've got it for so many traits now, not just weaning weight. They've got it for maternal milking ability. So they can predict that this cow is going to give so many more pounds of milk to her calf than the breed average. And if you get a cow that's got like a negative, say a negative 10 milk EPD, that's not good. And so you're the auctioneer, you don't want to highlight that during the sale. And I'll tell you another quick funny story. So I've got a really good friend who's a great horse auctioneer in California. One of the best. He also lead auctioneer at Keeneland, where they sell all the thoroughbred racehorses. Well, they have a big bull sale in California called Red Bluff Bull Sale. And they sell bulls, they sell horses, and they even sell working dogs. And he booked this sale, even though he didn't really know a lot about cattle, because he wanted to sell the horses. And he called me when he booked. He goes, "Hey, anyway, I could talk you into coming to California to help me sell Red Bluff." And I go, "Oh, you got Red Bluff?" And he goes, "Yeah." Because I couldn't, I didn't have the date. And he goes, "All right." So he ended up doing it all by himself. And he called me the day after, 2 days after. He goes, "Anyway, I can talk you into coming next year." I go, "Why? What's the problem?" He goes, "Let me tell you." He said, "I was looking through that catalog and all those EPDs and stuff." He said, "I didn't know what I was looking at." And he goes, "I'd noticed that birth weight EPD and some of them were real low and some of them were real high." And he said, "One of them was like 112. And I thought, that's good." So I go, "Hey, boy, got 112 birth weight EPD. It wasn't 112. But anyway, birth weight EPD, you do want a negative number.
Yeah, you want
because
low.
the lighter the birth weight of the calf, the easier that cow is going to have it. Well, he didn't know that, and he made a big deal about this big number. And so after that, he said, this old cowboy walked up to him and he said, "You don't know much about cattle, do you?" Was it that obvious?
No.
And he explained to him what he'd done. He goes, "Oh, great." He said, "I'm going to get my friend Bill Lambert to come out here next week." But anyway, so that's just a typical story of how you need to know all this terminology and what you're talking about, because if you don't, it's going to show up real quick.
Do you auction off like these bucking bulls and stuff for
I have done a couple of
rodeo?
bucket bull sales. There are guys that specialize in that.
Is there the same like terminology that they have for that?
No, I mean, yes, they would have a lot of the same terminology.
I mean, it's like breeding, right?
Well,
But they would have different terminology that's relative to their bucking ability.
yeah,
You know,
commercial versus.
They tie these machines on the calves and they buck them out, and this machine averages or measures how much force the kick is and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, if you're selling bucking bulls, you need to know.
Yeah, you were talking about straws and semen. Roy Carter, they were bucking a PBR at Lake Charles, and Kid Rock got in a fight with another bull, and he went down and the bull had him down, and he couldn't get back up, so they drug him into a trailer, and he called a guy at A&M and hauled him to A&M.
Hey,
By the time he
Lord.
arrived at A&M, he was dead.
Yeah.
But they checked his temperature, his body temperature, but his body temperature was still where they could draw semen, so they drug.
So they pulled all the semen they could out.
semen off of him, and there's still some Kid Rock bulls now.
Wow.
I thought you were talking about the rapper.
Kid Rock, the musician?
Yeah.
Why he was in the trailer, they were getting semen from him.
The only Kid Rock I know is the dude that sings Cowboy.
There's a famous
Yeah,
PBR bull.
yeah,
Kid Rock.
Kid Rock's pretty cool. I think we're learning that you can auction off just about anything in this class, okay? Start auction for snakes, probably.
Oh, yeah, especially.
So I screwed up Lori's laptop.
Yeah,
so
you
maybe-
broke it. Class is over, dismissed for the day. I'm kidding.
See you tomorrow.
Let's see. I think it's the computer, actually.
Is it frozen?
Well, there was a little block came up.
There you go. You got it.
There you go. It advanced.
Okay.
Look at me.
Okay.
Ah.
How we doing on time?
How much you need?
I don't, how much
You
do
don't
you
know
need?
how much you-
How much do
Might
you
need
need
a-
from me?
Do you
A
know how much
restroom
left?
break.
I don't. Well, just a couple left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the one you were on?
I was on that. I was on that one.
You didn't even go to the film.
Get like practice.
Right, yeah. no, they-
We'll get it together for a minute.
That's the guy who's been on
So anyway, there's those. There's a whole nother set of data that uses the dollar beef, dollar feed, dollar wean, those are, again, all measurements that you need to know, be familiar with.
What are just a couple of those? What's dollar beef? What's dollar beef?
It's a big old hairy formula that basically combines the dollar, combines the bottom three, the feed, the wean, and the grid, to come up with a total composite dollar beef. And so that's the one everybody talks about in the Angus breed right now. So if you got like $170, $180 B, that's good. You know, you want to highlight that. You're selling along, you know, hey, you got $170 B or dollar beef. You say dollar beef, everybody knows it's dollar beef, which is kind of the composite of these others. You know, it's like a combined number. But if you're breeding cat, if you're a commercial guy and your program is all centered around vertical integration, weaning that calf, backgrounding that calf, sending that calf to the feedlot, and you want the best feedlot performance you can get, you're going to want to look at that dollar F number.
Don't they also like measure the ribeye and like a whole bunch of stuff?
Yes.
on them?
Yes, and there are there's what we call scan data. And they can measure the back fat thickness very accurately with a sonogram machine, like what you do a baby, you know, with, same thing. They can now scan for marbling, show you exactly how much marbling is in there. And that's the dollar G, the dollar grid. So if you're following them all the way through and you own that calf from the day it was born all the way through to the meat packing plant, and that's where you sell it when it becomes a carcass, you want to pay attention to that dollar G because you're getting paid on what they call the grid, which factors in the quality of the carcass.
Okay.
So anyway, I couldn't begin to explain to you how they come up with those numbers. I just know that when I'm selling seed stock and I know I've got a group of guys that all they care about is getting that calf to weaning at the heaviest weight they can, they're going to be looking at that dollar W number.
Okay.
And so, you know, if I know that that's my crowd, then I'm going to pick out those top 10 dollar W bulls and say, when they come in the ring, I'm gonna highlight that.
So,
Hey guys,
is it kind of like, because I have no idea about cattle, but is it kind of like the farm equipment business, like, you know, you line things up according to,
Oh, yeah.
you know, this is going to bring more, so you put this one first,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you put them,
A lot of-
you go by those numbers.
Yeah, well, Not just those numbers, but
But
yes,
like
we're
according to
looking
your
at the
crowd.
phenotypic quality of the animal, we're looking at the numbers, we're looking at the breeding history of that animal. If we're selling cows, yes, we factor all that in and come up with our sale order.
Right.
And we start, we start with the best and progressively work our way down.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's another big difference in a purebred sale and a sale barn sale. A lot of sale barns sell the cattle as they arrive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the best calf there might sell at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because it got there late.
Right.
And real quick, so those guys that are interested in the dollar wean, are they gonna take the calf all the way to the dollar beef?
No, they're gonna sell the calf once they wean it. That's
Okay.
why they want the heaviest calf they can get at weaning.
Okay.
And
So they don't keep them very long?
No, they calve them, they get them on the ground, and they wean them at 6, 7 months, 8 months sometimes.
That's what you do, the cow-calf operation.
Yeah.
basically. Okay.
Yes. I kind of do that. The ones I don't want to keep, I sell.
Sell to the commercial.
But I've got a set of steers on feed that I'm carrying through all the way to slaughter. So there's more money in that, but there's also a lot more work in that. So I'm not
True,
doing a
that's
whole lot.
the-
I'm taking my best ones and feeding them.
Are you true horseback, or you do things, you do it all in four-wheelers and
We're true
helicopters?
four-wheeler.
You are?
Yeah. They don't eat as
Like
much,
the-
they don't get sick.
I know, like they're
So anyway,
real cowboys.
What else? Okay, so a couple of things that we're real particular about after the auction. I like to meet with the owner, and I've gotten where I'm really good friends with a lot of my customers, and I talk to them every day on the phone anyway. But when I have a sale for a guy that hadn't done his sale ever, as soon as it's over, if we meet that afternoon, if you've got time, most of the time we don't, but it's worth it to me to have a follow-up visit. Say, hey, you're gonna be at Fort Worth? Yeah, let's have dinner. Let's talk about your sale. And I just sit down with him and go, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we need to do different next time? And I want to get his feedback and let him know and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do we do? And if he doesn't say 10, you did a 10, nothing I'd change. If he says 8, then my next question is, okay, what do we need to do to get it to a 10? I think that's real important, and that's kept us in the business with some longevity, because people know we want to do the best job for him that we can do. We're not just blow in there and do the sale and blow out and get a check and go to the next one. When I was managing sales and when I'm working with other sale managers, it's real important to leave that place as clean as you found it. So when you get there, set up, have the sale, I want to make sure if I'm managing the sale, which I don't do anymore, but I do it for 2 guys, but I used to do every one of them. We made sure that place was just as pristine as it was when we got there. That goes a long ways. If you just leave the place trashed, chances are you're not going to get a call to do it next year. Paperwork, to be as expedient as you can on invoicing. If you're managing these sales, it's your responsibility as a sale manager to get all those cattle transferred, the registrations transferred. And sometimes it's the breed association's fault. There's nothing you can do about that. But if you sit there and hold those registration papers for a month before you get them transferred, and then those buyers start calling the seller and say, hey, where's my registration paper on that bull I bought 2 months ago? That's not going to reflect well on you. So, just details, paperwork, all that kind of stuff, don't lag behind on that. Be on top of it, so that'll pay dividends down the road. Load out, getting cattle in and out of the ring, we learn it's real important, even if you have to pay a premium to get good help in there. If the guy says, yeah, my nephew, he's got a dozer business, but he's pretty handy with cattle, we put him in the back. I'd rather have professionals that work cattle every day, because if they don't, and they don't know how to move cattle and work cattle, you can get one really stirred up before she gets in the ring, or he gets in the ring, and then he gets in the ring and he's all snorty and he's slinging sawdust everywhere and he's trying to get out of the ring. It really affects his value. I don't care how good he is. People don't want an animal with a bad disposition, and that might be the only time he ever acted up. And the only reason he acted up is because somebody in the back didn't know what they were doing, hit him with a hot shot or something, and got him all stirred up. So it's worth it if the ranch doesn't have enough qualified labor, go ahead and hire you a team of really good cowboys to do that. And like I said, when work's all done, now it's time to start thinking about next year. So when I have a sale for somebody and we get all that done, before I leave,
Getting on the calendar.
I get on the calendar for next year. The guy I did a sale for yesterday in Oklahoma, I didn't even have to do it, he did. I walked up and we were chit-chatting, and he said, well, that sure was a good sale, man, I appreciate it. He goes, and you got us on the calendar for next year? I said, yes, sir, sure do. So anyway, that's all the slides, that's my contact information. I'll have to admit, my wife's back there. I'm not real active on social media. But I do check my email, and anyway, we can help you. If you got an interest in livestock, purebred commercial, whatever, any questions I can ever answer for you, it would be my pleasure, and it's good to be back. It's a great place.
So we get to hear you and your wife's chant a little bit more?
Yeah, let's do it.
Come on, we want to hear these
Together.
championship voices.
Yeah.
I've won one little contest. My wife, she's the superstar. She won the international auction contest, the NAA's contest.
So what do you think? Is your son gonna be the next world champion?
That's up to him. I told him he's gonna have to blaze his own trail. In fact, I told him before he came here, I said, now look, when you go in there, don't tell anybody who you are. I said, I just want you to go in there and make it on your own. And then he said, well, Mike kind of showed me.
Yeah. First day, he's like, well.
Mike told everybody.
He just said, I know a couple folks who are pretty good, and I just wanted to come see what it's all about.
Yeah, he was super humble.
Mike said that he came from auction royalty, I think so.
Yeah.
Check test, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Does that sound all right? Check test, 1, 2.
All right.
Great.
Good.
All right. What are we gonna sell?
I don't know, but we ask you, sell what you said.
Yeah.
See what?
Bad video you doing that?
Sure.
You have to talk to my agent, get signed a contract.
Don't worry, I won't post it anywhere.
All right, let's just sell a bull like
Yeah.
what we sold yesterday, since that's fresh on my mind. All right, well, here is an Angus bull, lot number 35. He's sired by Big Daddy, and out of a great cow. Look at his EPDs. Here we go. What do we get for it? $5,000. Down 2,000 there. Thank you. And 2.5. Down 2. Down 2.5. 5. $2,500. Down 5. Down 7.5. 3. And $3,000. Superior's in the lead 3. Now 2.5. 32. 50. Curtis, you're out now 5. And 35. Superior, you're out 35. 7.5. $4,000. Down 4. And $4,000. Right down 4. Down 250. Down 4,250. And 42.5. All down here. Down to a half, all down 400, down to a half, all down half. So right down here, $4,000. Buyer number.
Three.
Call out those buyer numbers. What's your buyer number?
3.
3. Buyer number 3. Thank you. All right.
Sorry.
Wendy, I bet they will be next.
All right, let's see.
You know you really didn't get a bull, right, Brittany?
Do what?
Todd,
So what's your expertise?
although I would love
You know,
to.
Lori's keeping track how much you spent
So-
this, right?
Yes.
I do have to tell one or two funny little stories. I went to auction school in 2008. And if y'all do the math, Denton sitting back there on the back row was a little taught. And Doak used to tell people that best way to practice your auction chant was in the car. So guess what my kids got to hear all the time? And I said something to Denton last week about practicing his chant in the car. And he said, Mom, we all remember. We all remember. And I would put them on the couch and line them up and make them be bitters for me. So, goodness. All right, I sell property and benefit and charity auctions. That's what I do. And when you get to hear a little bit more about the National Auctioneers Association, which I'm all for, I'm a fan, you will hear more about how that can connect you with other auctioneers, and also you can look into getting designations in different areas that you want to specialize in. My first designation was BAS, which is a Benefit Auction Specialist. So it helps me to go in and work with a nonprofit and tell them, yes, I can consult with you, I'm an expert in this field, these are the various things I can help you with, so that's what I do. I obviously also don't deal with professional buyers. I deal with amateurs that might go to 1 or 2 or 3 galas a year, so it does not behoove me to go as fast as you might hear Doak selling 150 bulls or an automobile every 18 or 20 seconds. So when you go to the car sale, you'll see. How many of you ever been to a car sale? You ever been? Okay.
We're going Tuesday.
All right, well, you'll hear it. You'll hear how fast they've got to move those cars to the lane. So I'll try to think of something interesting I sold last year. I actually sold, I've never sold this before, I sold dinner with an astronaut. This was a man who walked on the moon. This is one of my bigger clients, and the chair happened to know this gentleman. Charlie, what was Charlie's last name? He's one of the only living group that was in the Neil Armstrong, that generation, all right? And I'll tell you, it went for about, well, I don't know. I'll let you guess, all right? I'll count in
Buzz
increments, I'll
Aldrin?
let you guess.
Was it Buzz Aldrin?
No, Charlie's.
No, it wasn't. I'll think of it in a minute, all right? Here we go. How about 2.5? 250, starting now 500. Would you give 500 where? Now 750, 750 there, 750. Would you give 1,000? 1,000 on it. Would you go 1 now, 12.5, 12.5, now 1,500. 15 here. Now 1,750, sir, 1,750. Now 2, ma'am. Would you give 2? Would you go 2,000 here? Now 22.5. 22.5, now 2,500 in the back. 25, would you give 25? 2,500 there, now 2,750. 2,750 there, now 3, would you give 3? Gotta go. 3,000, would you give 3,000 there? Now 32.5, 32.5, 32.5, 32.5. What do you want?
4,000.
She bets 4,000. I like the way you bet. 4,000. 42.5. Anybody else at 42.5? 42.5. Now 45. You want back in? 45. 4,500. 45. Would you give 45? Now 47.5. 5. Would you give 5? Would you go 5? 5,000. Now 52.5. 52.5. Gotta close it. 52.5.
7,500.
5,000. Right there. Got a bid today. 5,000. What you gonna do?
That was good.
5,000, and it's bidder number 704. Thank you. He jumped in at the last minute, which is always a good idea at an auction. Thanks, guys. And the one thing I want to tell you is it takes a lot of courage to come to auction school, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. So give yourselves a round of applause. Who's next?
So how much do you get for it?
I think about 10,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if you get a good dinner with a professional athlete or something like that, that group, and groups that I've done for 5 or 6 years, I can just about tell what things are going to go for and how much they would give in a paddle race. I'll let Mike tell you the rest.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's give those guys a hand. It looks like it's about 11 or 12 till, so at 5 o'clock, be back in here. We've got another class. We're going to work on ring work. And so we've got Philip here, we'll do ring work, and then we'll talk about auto auctions and other stuff. Okay?
No, you are.